Now we go to another concept, that is file handling or working with files. Now, all these programs that we had done till now, we were giving the data while typing the program, that is in the program itself. So if you recall, I was writing num equal to 100. So 100 is the data. In the program itself, I was typing the data. But sometimes when the data is very large, it is not possible for me to type all the data in the program. For example, I want to know the marks of all the students in my college. So we have 700 students in our college. So if I was supposed to type all the 700 students' marks and name while entering the program, it will be very tedious. So what should I do? I store the data first itself in another file. So I have to create a file, store all the data that I require in the file earlier so that it will be permanently available for me whenever I want. Then from this file, I can read it later whenever I want. So whenever I would like to store some data permanently, I make use of file handling. The program will read the data from the file while it is executing. So the concept of reusability of data comes here. The data is permanently available in my hard disk. Whenever I want it, I can just read from there and perform whatever operations I want. I can do addition, printing, whatever I like. Now, there are many file handling operations that can be performed, like reading of a file, opening of a file, writing to a file, etc. But I will be covering only reading the data from the file because only that is there in your syllabus. Now, let's see how to read data from a file. So, we are assuming that the file has already been created. Whenever you do a file handling program, remember the file has to be created prior to executing your program. So, what are the steps? First, open the file. So whenever you want to read, you have to first open it, right? So I want to read a book. What should I do first? I open the book. Similarly, whenever I want to read from a file, I have to open it. For that, I have a function called as open. Open, if you notice, takes two parameters. Parameters means what I write in the bracket. So I have two parameters. The first one, student, and the second one, R, in small letters. Please note, it should be in R, small letters, otherwise it will give you an error. Now, what is the meaning of these two parameters? Open is a function name. Within bracket, student represents the file where I have already stored my data. So this should be existing. First, what you should do? Create a file called student, put your student's data in that file, and that file name I have to give here. The second is R. R stands for read. So if you want to write to a file, just change it to W. So now, since we are reading from the file, I use R. Next step, I have to read from the file. Now my file is open. Now I read from it and I use the read lines function. So in the previous sentence, you notice that I used a variable called file. That is storing all my file details. So the file is a variable. It is not a keyword. You can use any name that you want. Just for convenience, to show that it is file handling, I used it as file. You can use X, Y, Z, whatever you want. So in this file variable, I am storing all the details of the file. I want to read from that file. So I use the function read lines. It reads all the lines in your file. So there is a file called student. When you write file.read lines, it reads all the lines from that file. Finally, after the reading is over, what should you do? Yes, we have to close the file. How do we do that? By using file.close method. So the three simple steps to read data from a file: open a file, read the file, close the file. Let us see a program using this and that is lab cycle number 24. That is, write a Python program to display the student marks from the record. That means the record is already existing. The file is already existing and I want to read from that. So first we have to create a file called student. So here there are two files. One that is already created and we are storing the marks. That is my student. Can you see I have stored three students' names and 3 marks there? You can follow any format that you want. So I have just written student name, colon, student marks. It is not necessary you have to type in this format. In whichever way you type, the answer will come. I have just showed you one format. Now this file is already existing. Next, I go for the second file, which I have to open in Jupyter Notebook and type it. So see the 3 steps: open a file, read a file, and finally print the contents and close the file. I will show you the demo now. So please observe carefully. This is a little different than all the previous programs we have executed. So go to the main folder. I have to create a text file. So can you see new option? From there, select text file. So this is the file where I am storing student details. I have to name it as student. Please don't type .txt. Just write the name of the file as student. Student1. So I have named the file as student1. Now you enter whatever data you want here. It can be in any format. I'm just giving a heading: student name, colon, student marks. You can use colon or dash or space, whatever you want. The way you type, the same output you're going to get. So I'm just storing 3 students' names here. So first line, Ramesh. His marks is 90. Next, Suresh. His marks is 95. So it is not necessary that you have to give like this much space, etc. It is just for readability. You can type in any manner you like. You will get the output in the same way. So you don't have to worry about the spaces or anything. Whatever you type in the file, you will get the same thing. So I have stored 3 students' name. Please remember to save it. If you don't save it, it will not work. So I have clicked on File, Save. Now I type my Python program. This is just a file where I'm saving the student details and the name of the file is student1. Now I go to my Python program. So go to New, take Python program, and I type my program. So what are the 3 steps? I can give a name for the notebook. Lab cycle number 24. So first, what should I do? Open the file, right? So Python program to display student marks from an existing record or from an existing file. Remember comments. So this is a comment. It is written with a hash symbol. This line will not be executed. You will not get an output. It is just for information purpose. Next sentence, file is equal to, we use the open function. What are the 2 parameters? First one is the name of the file. What did I give? Student1. Second, I want to read from the file. So I use small r for reading. Then what should I do? I read from the file. For that, I use file.readlines. Please remember the S. If you don't give S, it will read only one line and you will not get the other output. So read lines is used to read all the lines. So please remember READLINES is required. If you miss S, you will get the output, but you will get only a single line. And where are we storing those red items? In the lines. So lines equal to means I'm storing all the data in my lines. Now I'm using the for loop. So I'm having many lines inside the lines variable, and using the for loop, I'm just going to print it. So see the for loop, the syntax: for x in, what is my list name? Lines, and I just want to print it. So print x. Notice the tab space. So if statement, else statement, for statement, all should have tab for the next line. And finally, we close the file. So the 3 steps: open, read, and finally close the file. So we have closed the file. So we run the program. So this is the file that we are going to read. It has 3 students' names. Can you see the output? Now I'm going to add one more name to the existing file. So go back to student file. I'll add one more name there, and please remember to save it. Otherwise you will not get the updated output. So you can add one more record now. Save the file and run the program again. Can you notice that the updated file is being printed here? So this is about file handling. So we saw how to open a file, read from a file, and print the file. Remember, we have to create the file earlier to running my Python program. It should be available earlier. So for that, go to new text file, give a name for that text file, and just type whatever data you want in the text file. The name, please see that you don't make spelling mistake while using this in the Python program. It should have the same name. If you're calling it student here, it should be student in the Python file also. So that is about the file handling. So we have finished lab cycle 24. Now, we go to another concept called as function. Now think of a regular task that most of you enjoy and you do very often: shopping. So you think that shopping is just a very easy task, but I tell you it is a very complex task because it consists of many smaller subtasks. Let us see. So just the word shopping, it consists of so many subtasks to be done. First, what do? We have to prepare a list of all the things that we would like to buy. Second, I decide on which shops to go or which shop to go to get all these things. Then I think about how much will the price of all these items approximately be, how much money should I take with me. Next, should I pay in debit card, credit card, cash? So you arrange for that. Then how should I reach that shopping complex? Then after going there, you start searching for the items that you want, pick it up, put it in your basket, pay the bill, verify it, and come back home. Can you see how many steps were there in the simple word called as shopping? So sometimes a very complex task like this, which requires so many steps, can be done in a very easy way using the concept of functions. So to make a very big program much simpler and short, we make use of functions. Here, I'm going to show you an example which is there in your lab cycle. They have told to find the variance of a population. So to find the variance, all of you know the formula. We have to have a sample. So I have a sample here, 5, 8, 10, etc. Then I have to find the mean of that sample. So how do you find the mean? We have to find the sum divided by the number of items. Then what I have to do? I have to find the difference between the mean and different items, square it, so many steps. Finally, I get my answer. So there are about 10 to 12 steps here, right? Now, this all can be reduced to a single step, P variance. I just write one single code line in my program, P variance. This P variance is nothing but a function. So see, without function, I have to write about 10 lines of code to find the variance of a number. But using a function, I can just write a single word, P variance, and for whichever data I give in the bracket, I can find the variance. Isn't it easy? So functions are used to make our programming easy. What are the advantages? A complex task which consists of so many steps can be made easy, and we just have to write one single word for that. That is a function name. It is called as a function. Every function is having a name. It's called as function name. So many statements are available in this function, which are automatically performed when you call this function. So when you say P variance, all the steps are taking place in the computer, finding the sum, finding the mean, finding the difference, square, etc. So a big program can be divided into a simple program by using function. Python has many built-in functions. That means there are functions provided by this programming language for us to use. It makes our programming much easier. Some of the functions are P variance, that is to find the variance. To draw a pie chart, we have pi. To draw a bar chart, we have bar. We see all this later in our programs. Next, we go to number system. So here we have a program which is program number 19, where we are supposed to do some conversions. So the basic number systems, binary, octal, decimal and hexadecimal. So we are required to do conversions from decimal to binary, decimal to octal, decimal to hexadecimal, etc. For that also we are provided with inbuilt functions in Python. So we don't have to worry about dividing successively by 2, getting the remainder, etc. Just by using simple words, bin, in bracket, DEC, which represents the number to be converted. That is, the decimal number to be converted to binary is given by DEC. Second, OCT. Third one, HEX. All these I will give you a demo. It's all there in the lab cycle. So now we go to program number 19. So program number 19 is write a program to convert decimal to binary, decimal to octal, and decimal to hexadecimal. So we are going to use the inbuilt functions. So using the concept of functions, we're going to do it. Okay, new Python program. New file has been opened. So in the first cell, we rename it. This is lab cycle 19. Write a comment. So it is preferable that you write a comment for every program that you do, because later when you look at it, you would have forgotten what this program is for. So now when you're doing it, you remember. But after say a month, you want to revise it and you want to study it for your exam. That time you get a doubt like, what is this function for? That is why it is recommended that all of you should write the comment for every program. So we start the program. We have a variable called DEC, that is to store the decimal number. It is having the decimal value 15. Now, to convert to binary, I use bin. That's all. So bin is a function to convert the decimal number inside DEC to binary. And where are we storing the answer? In the variable b. Similarly, to convert decimal number to octal, I use the simple function OCT. Within bracket, I write DEC, that is 15. It represents 15, the number I want to convert to octal. Where am I storing the result? In O. Next, H equal to HEX bracket DEC. That is the decimal number, which is 15 stored in DEC, is converted to hexadecimal. And where is the answer stored? In the variable H. Finish. Now we just have to print the outputs. So where are my outputs? In B, O, and H. First I display B. Okay, first I display the decimal number. So it is a reference which decimal number we are converting. So first I print my decimal number. Where is it? Yes, in the variable DEC. Next, I print the binary number, that is the converted value. Where is it? In the variable B. You can use any variables of your choice, provided you follow the rules that I have given you. I'm just making it simple, so I've written BOH. You can use any name that you like, following the rules of the variables. So I have printed the binary value. Similarly, my octal value is stored in O. I print it. Octal value is O. So comma is a separator between the message and O. Print statement for the hexadecimal value. Where is my output stored? In H. So hexadecimal value, that is the converted value, is stored in H. Comma separator H. Okay, I run the program. See the output? Now, if you notice, decimal number 15, I am displaying. 15 is now being converted to binary, octal, and hexadecimal. The binary value starts with 0B. It indicates that it is in binary form. So that is not the answer. The answer is 1111. That is the binary value of 15 is 1111. Before that, it is prefixed with 0B. What does it stand for? It is in binary form. Similarly, octal value, the answer is 17, that is 17, but it is preceded with 0O to show that it is an octal number. So the answer is only 17. The 0O represents that it is an octal value. Now the last one, it is F. The answer is F. It is a hexadecimal value of 15, but it has to show that it is a hexadecimal value. So we show it is preceded by 0 and X. Isn't it easy using functions? So what calculations we should have done, divide by 16, divide by 8, all those things are reduced, and we have got a very simple program in our hands. So making a program simple is the advantage of a function. Now we go to the next concept, that is to find the standard deviation and variation. So variance and standard deviations are two concepts related to statistics. So when we have a population, so we have lots of data, we would like to find out how much the data is varying from its mean value. So the two ways of measuring the difference between each data item and the mean value of that sample is given by the two statistical concepts called variance and standard deviation. So the formulas are given here. We are using population standard deviation and population variance. We also can use sample standard deviation formula, sample variance formula. Both are similar. Now, the population standard deviation formula is given, but we don't have to worry about this. Why? We are going to use functions. So let us see what is the function for standard deviation and variance. So we have a library called a statistics library. It has inbuilt functions to find mean, variance, standard deviation, and so many more things. But in our lab cycle, we want only two things, that is variance and standard deviation. So can you see the function P variance for finding the variance? It belongs to the statistics library. So I write statistics.pvariance. What is in the bracket? The data for which I want my variance. The second function is to find the standard deviation of a population. So P stdev is the name of the function. Within the bracket, I give the data for which I have to find the standard deviation. And since I have taken it from the statistics library, I use statistics.pstdev. So in order to work with these functions, the most important thing is import the statistics library. So to work with any statistical function, we have to import the library called as statistics. How do I import it? By using the keyword import. Can you notice it is in small letters? Import means just include it in our program. So until I have that statistics library in my program, I will not be able to use the functions. So next, we look at the lab cycle 23. So lab cycle number 23, it is used to find the variance and standard deviation for a given set of data. Again, I go to new, I take Python 3. It opens up a new file for me. I name the file lab number 23. In my first cell, I am typing the program. So as recommended, please write a comment. So comment tells what this program is for. So this program is to find the variance and standard deviation for a given set of data. Can you tell me how to store this data? Since it consists of many values, I will use a list. So remember list, it is a variable that stores many values. Now, which is the library that I have to import? Did you tell statistics? Yes, you are right. So we import the statistics library. So that is a very important step which you should not forget. Until you write this import statistics, it will give you an error. I will show you the error also later, what sort of error it will give. Now I'm using a list. Why do I use a list? Because in a single variable, I want to store many data values. So I'm going to create a data list, just storing some data values in a population. What is the variable name? Sample. So in my sample, I'm creating a list of numbers. Can you notice the square bracket? So please remember to use square bracket for a list. Next, we are going to use the function pvariance. Which library does it belong to? Statistics. So I write statistics.pvariance. Then, which is the data for which I want to find the variance? Where is it? Yes, sample. So I write sample. So that is where I have stored my data. And what is VAR? It is a variable which stores the answer. See, a single line of program is enough to find the variance of a sample. So where is my answer stored? VAR. I print it out. Print the variances, which is a variable that is having the answer, variance. So I will run it. So you can see how the output for variance come. Can you see the answer? The variance is 14.8. Now we remove the import statistics. I'm going to comment it. So what is the meaning of comment? It does not execute, as if it is not there. Now I run the program once more. Okay, the library has already been included. So since you have already included, it is coming. So in case you don't import it for the first time, it will give you an error that statistics library not found. That time remember to import the statistics library. Now what are we going to do? We are going to find the standard deviation. We are going to find out the standard deviation. How to find out the standard deviation? We use the function name PSTDEV. So it belongs to the statistics library. So I type statistics.pstdev. That is a function name. It takes one parameter, that is for which data do you want to find the standard deviation. That is inside sample. Sample is a list of numbers. Where is my answer stored? Yes, in the variable SD. So SD is a variable which stores the answer for my standard deviation, and I'm going to print it. So we click on the run button. Standard deviation is the standard deviation is, you get the answer. So isn't it easy? If you use just two function names, P variance and PSTDEV, we can find the standard deviation and variance of any sample. You can change the same sample data, include another 2-3 numbers. So very easy. So for whichever sample you want, you can find it. It will update the output. You can see that the output will change now. Okay. Okay. Next. We are going to a different area, that is we are going to do some drawing now. So all of us know that a picture speaks 1,000 words. That is, if I show you something as an image or a picture, you are going to understand it much easier and faster. So even we prefer charts and bar graph, pie graph, etc., compared to lots of answers. So the standard deviation, if you had shown it using a graph or a chart, you would have understood the answer much more clearly compared to just seeing the value. So next two programs, that is 25 and 26 of the lab cycle, deal with how to draw a 2D chart. So we have two charts here. One is the bar graph and the other one is the pie chart. So first we'll look at the theory part for it. In order to work with graphics, we have a library called as Matplotlib. Okay, what is the library name? Matplotlib library. It is a plotting library. That means we want to do any 2D plotting of graphs, charts. You can draw straight line, you can draw circles, any type of graphics that you want to draw, you can use the Matplotlib library. So it is a visualization library. Now, in order to work with this library, we have to install Matplotlib in the command prompt. I will just show you how to install Matplotlib in the command prompt. Until you install this, it will not work. So we go back to our command prompt. How do I go to the command prompt? I'll show you how to enter into the command prompt. So Jupyter Notebook, we are exiting from that. How do I exit? Log out. So we exit from the Jupyter Notebook. I'm going to exit from the command prompt also. How do I exit? Using Control-C. Now we close the command prompt just so that it is like a revision for you. So we go back to the desktop. Now I'm going to open the command prompt. There are two ways to open the command prompt. One, using search button. Next, Windows R. So you press the Windows and the R keys together. That also takes you to this command prompt. So here we have to include or install the Matplotlib library. For that, I write the command pip install Matplotlib. So it is a plotting library. Lib means library, plot stands for plotting, for mathematical plotting. So it is installing now. It just takes a very short time. Yes, that's all. So it has been installed. So, and you want me to show it again? Pip install matplotlib. So this has to be installed along with the Jupyter Notebook whenever you want to work with any 2D graphics type of program like bar chart, pie chart, line chart, etc. Now we go back to Jupyter Notebook. How do I go to Jupyter Notebook? Remember? Yes, we type Jupyter Notebook. So we give the Jupyter Notebook command. It is opening the Jupyter Notebook. Again, these are the folders available. I go to my existing folder. You want me to show you how to create a new folder once more? Okay, so this is the folders. I'm going to create a new folder. Click on new. You go to folder. You will get untitled folder. You click on the checkbox next to untitled folder. I'm going to rename the folder now. That is graphics folder. We'll call it as graphics folder. We are going to store the graphics. We are going to store the two programs having graphics in it. Now I open the graphics folder. I'm going to start a new Python file. So I click on new Python 3 and I type the program for program number 26 pie chart. So write a program to create a labeled pie chart using matplotlib library. So first we start with the hash. Why do we write hash? It represents a comment. So we write the program title, lab cycle 26. Write a Python program to create a labeled pie graph using, do you remember the library name? Matplotlib library. So please note that in the syllabus there is a spelling mistake. This is the correct spelling for matplotlib. They have mentioned in the syllabus wrong spelling. If you go to install that, it will give you an error. So this is the correct spelling, matplotlib. There I think it is given as POLT, POLT. It is plot. So first what should we do? Install it in command prompt. After that, import the library. Import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. What was matplotlib? It is a library for plotting 2D graphs, charts, etc. PyPlot is a subset of this library used for drawing mathematical pictures like graphs, etc. So PyPlot is a part or a sub part of matplotlib library. So many types of graphs we can do here: histograms, bar chart, line chart. So first we require two data, one for the x-axis and one for the y-axis. In the x-axis, I'm going to store the names of students. So X is a list. Remember list? It is a variable for storing many data values. So X is storing a list of student names. So I have put 5 students' names. Now remember to give 5 corresponding marks for these students. So in the y-axis, I'm going to put marks for these 5 students. So see that there is a one-to-one matching between the student names and marks. If you put only 4 marks and 5 student names, it will give an error. So it should be same. If you have 5 data in X, you should have 5 data in Y also, because X and Y coordinates should match, no? Okay. Now, I'm going to use the variable PLT. Can you see PLT in the first line? So PLT, what does it represent? Your library matplotlib. So from that library, I'm going to give a title for my pie chart. How do I give the title? By using a function called title. So PLT dot title, I give whatever title I want. So I'm typing students marks pie graph. So I'm giving a title for my pie chart. It will appear at the top of the pie chart. The name of the chart I want to give as students marks pie graph. Now I'm going to plot the pie chart. How do I plot it? By a function called as pie, P-I-E. So it belongs to the matplotlib. So I'm using plt.py. So now I'll explain the parameters. First is the y-axis. So here I want the marks to be inside the pie chart. So inside the pie chart, it represents the marks. Now, what labeling do I want outside the pie chart? So for each sector of the pie chart, what is the label? What should I label? The name of the student who got that marks, right? So the name of the student is available in the list X. That is the labeling that I want outside in the pie chart. For each sector, the name should have the students' names. That should be the heading there. That is given as label. So labels equal to X. The meaning is X is the name of the student. I want the names of the students to be outside the pie chart. For each sector, for which student it belongs to, that should come. Now next, I have a parameter called as auto PCT. What is auto PCT? It stands for automatic percentage display. So I want to display the percentage of each student's marks in the corresponding sector. So we use auto PCT equal to percentage D. What does this percentage D stand for? It represents an integer. Remember integer? It is a whole number. Okay. Now this is the main sentence for plotting the pie chart. Next, we have to show the pie chart. So we have given all the parameters. What should be the title? What should be the label, etc. Now what should I do? I want to display it, right? So I use plt.show. Now I click on the run button. It will take some time. Whenever the graph executes, it just takes a little time to run. Can you see the pie chart? Can you see the title? I had given the title as student marks pie graph. Can you see the label? When I give labels equals to X, X had represented the students' names, right? So that is the label that is being shown outside the pie chart. Can you see the values inside? That represents the percentage, not the marks value. It is representing what percentage of marks that particular student has got. So you notice that Priya has got the least marks, so 8%. Ramesh has got the maximum, Suresh has got the maximum marks, so he's having the largest percentage, etc. Now I'll just show you a variation. So I told you in a data type, we have two types. One is called integer and one is called as float. So integer means what? Whole numbers. Now, I would like to display this percentage as a floating point. That means with decimal. What should I change here? Just a small change. I write percentage 0.1f. What is the meaning? F stands for floating point. And 0.1 says that I want 1 decimal point. Now we run it. Can you see 1 decimal point being displayed? So 8.6, 27.7, etc. So if I want 2 decimal place, can you tell me what is the answer? What should I change here? Yes, you are right. 0.2f. That's all. So I can either display in terms of integer or in terms of float with 2 decimal. Now I show you how to change the title of the graph. So where should I change? Yes, in the plt.title. So I'm going to just give students marks. So the title I'm changing. I'm going to run it. So see the change in the title, student marks. Suppose I add one more student. We are going to add one more mark. That is one more set of data. We add one more student name and one more marks. So any sort of variation, whatever you do, it will be reflected automatically. Just you have to click on the run button. You don't have to do anything else. Can you see there is one more new student added here? One more new sector called as Kiran has been added here. Easy, right? So this is how to create a pie chart. Next, we go for graph chart, bar graph. That is my last program. So lab cycle number 25. My last program is how to create a labeled bar graph. So my last Python program, lab cycle number 25. Write a Python program to create a labeled bar graph. I've created a new file. I'm renaming the file. I write a comment. Please encourage your students to write comments. Many students, they don't consider it important because it doesn't work anyway, no? But it is useful when they see this program later. I told when they study for the exam, after 2 to 3 months, that time they would have forgotten what this program is. So that time it will be useful. So every program should be preceded with a comment statement. How do I start a comment statement? With the hash symbol. Program number 25. Write a Python program to create a labeled bar graph. Again, we are using the matplotlib library. Remember, we have to install it first using pip install matplotlib in the command prompt. Once it is installed, I have to import that library. Import means just we are using it in our program. So I'm importing that library, matplotlib.pyplot. And what is the variable that represents this library? PLT. So I write as PLT. Now, in order to draw a bar graph, what do I need? I need 2 sets of data, one for the x-axis and one for the y-axis. So I'm going to take the same data that I used for my pie chart. So I just copy the data from the previous program. So I need again x-axis and y-axis. So since this is the advantage of Jupyter Notebook, can you see that it was just copied and pasted from some other notebook? You cannot do that in command prompt. So all these exercises, what we are showing, can be done in command prompt, but you don't have options like copy, paste, cut, etc. So this is very, very user friendly. So we have copied and pasted the data from my previous program. That is one for x-axis, that is the names of the students. Y-axis represents the marks of the students. You can give any name. I'm just naming it as X and Y, so it will be easy for you to show that it represents X-axis and Y-axis. You can give name, marks, any variable name. Now, I want to give a title for the bar chart. So what should I do? Yes, same code, plt.title. I have given a title, students, marks, bar, graph. Next, I would like to give a title for my x-axis. What is in x-axis? The student names, right? So I give a label for my x-axis as student name. Similarly, I'm going to give a title for my y-axis. So what should I write? Yes, right. plt.y label. That's all. X label for labeling the x-axis and Y label for labeling the Y-axis. So what is in the Y-axis? The marks. So I just correspondingly name it as marks. So I have labeled the bar chart, both X-axis as well as Y-axis. I have given a title for my bar chart as student marks for graph. Now, the most important sentence, see, all these things are secondary. Even if you don't write, you will get the output. My main thing is two sentences. PLT dot bar. X-axis comma Y-axis has to be given now. So can you see two parameters? So just the main points are PLT dot bar and PLT dot show. So we have to next write PLT dot show. PLT dot show. So remember, title, X label, Y label, all those are not mandatory. It is just to beautify your graph. You want to give some extra decorations. The main thing is you create an X-axis, Y-axis. You write PLT dot bar X comma Y and PLT dot show. Just these three sentences will give you the output. The others are all just for decoration purposes. Small p. Can you see how errors are shown here? Now, can you see the bar graph? It has a title, student marks bar graph. It has a title for X-axis, that is student name. It has a label for the Y-axis called as marks, and your graph is ready. See, there are so many options for this. We can change the color. It has come default as blue color. We can change the color, etc. So there is, what I'm showing you is only 1% actually of what all we can do in Python. So due to the time constraints, and this is the first time, so I don't want to show you so many options. So can you see the lines for the label, title, all that I'm commenting? Just 3 sentences will give you a simple bar graph. So I've commented it. I'm going to run it again. Can you see the bar graph? There is no title. There is no label for the X and Y axis. See the code? Isn't it simple? You just have to import a library, give an X axis, give a Y axis, draw the bar chart using plt.bar X comma Y and show. That's all. Now, actually, in your lab cycle, this is not enough. We have to label the bar graph. So that is a little bit complicated. Anyway, I'm going to show you that also. So for each bar, I have to mention the marks obtained by the student. That is, for the first student, Ramesh, I have to give the label 74 above the graph. That is what I am doing now. So I told you, in case you find it difficult, you can just do this much of execution. This line that I'm writing extra, there are 2 lines. I'm going to show you for writing the marks on top of each bar for each student. So I make use of the for loop. Do you remember this for loop? Yes, it is for displaying multiple lists. Remember I showed you I can display 2 lists at the same time using this zip function. So what is I and J? I represents the X-axis, that is the name of the student, and J represents the Y-axis, that is the marks of the student. So what is my syntax? For I comma J in zip, X represents the mark. So I corresponds to X and J corresponds to Y. Y is the marks of the student. Now what should I do? I'm going to give an annotation. Can you see the tab space? So when you give enter, automatically tab space will come. Every for loop, the next sentence should be with tab. So see a new function called as annotate. This annotate is a function that is used to specify the marks of each student above the graph. That is for each bar I want it. Now plt.annotate, it takes 3 values. First one, what is it that I want to display on the top of each bar? It is the marks. That is, for Ramesh, I want to display 74. Priya, I want to display 23. Where is that? In Y. But which is a variable that represents Y? Just look at the for loop. J, right? J represents Y and I represents X. So I write plt.annotate J. That means put the marks. Where should I put the marks? At the corresponding X and Y coordinate. So the x and y coordinate is given in the bracket as the next parameter. So I represents the x-axis, right? And j represents the y-axis. So I'll explain that sentence once more because I think a little bit difficult. PLT dot annotate what I want to display. I want to display the marks that is available in y. But in my for loop, can you see that j represents y? So I write j, comma, then which coordinate I want to represent that particular marks at the coordinate x comma y, that is at the top of the bar, at x comma y coordinate I want to show this. So I write I comma j. I represents the x axis and j represents the y axis. So I write plt dot annotate j comma I comma j. Now we see the output. Can you see the marks displayed on top of each graph? Okay, so this is our last lab exercise which I have given you a demo. That is lab number 25. Thank you.